In the past week, we learned that the FBI has interviewed several people with ties or former ties to the administration of Governor Susana Martinez. Some individuals interviewed by the FBI told the Santa Fe New Mexican that they were asked about campaign funds for both of the governor's runs for office and her advisor, Jay McCluskey. The governor has stated that she is confident that Mr. McCluskey did nothing wrong. And here with me today to talk about what is publicly known right now, we have Tom Garrity with the Garrity Group PR, Rob Nikolewski from thewatchdog.org, Antoinette Cedillo Lopez is back. She's Executive Director of Enlace Comunitario, and Rachel Sams, Editor-in-Chief of Albuquerque Business First. Rob, let's start with you. The allegations and investigations are coming to light at a time when you think about what's out there right now with Secretary of State Diana Duran. We've got all these other issues going on. This is a bit of a cloud here. Does that lend something a little bit extra to this look? Is this, or are we to assume something's going on here because of all the things that are happening, or just let the process play out and just see what?
Yeah, I think you have to let the process play out, but there is certainly a lot of smoke. Right. Whether there's fire, we'll find out in time. I think what's interesting about this, or one of the things that's interesting about this, is that all the reports from the New Mexican as well as from the Albuquerque Journal indicate that a lot of the complaints have been coming from disaffected Republicans,
right?
Not
Why
Democrats.
Is that, what difference does that make in your mind?
Well, I think it's interesting. I think just from an interesting, from that standpoint, that it's not just Democrats going after a Republican governor, and by all indications, I mean, we know there was an early report, I think about a year ago, where Harvey Yates, who is a prominent Republican, we don't know if he's involved in this investigation at all. But the point I'm making is he exchanged some jabs with Jay McCluskey. So
because of that, eyes were opened because it was another Republican. It just felt different.
Exactly.
Interesting. But Rachel Sams, good to see you. By the way, the governor has come out and said they failed to defeat me. She made a kind of a spin that it actually was about opponents to the governor. Does that kind of ring when you hear this in your gut? Does that make sense to you?
She's definitely coming out with that stance, and I think the way that you see this story, especially now because it's so early and there's so much we don't know, now the way that people see this story is really shaped by the beliefs that they already have, which way they lean politically. But the thing that's really interesting to me is how quickly this became a national story, and saw it in the national headlines. I really monitor the news coming out of New Mexico and what people are picking up nationally from New Mexico, and I saw a lot of places around the country picking that up, I think because of Martinez's national profile and the fact that her name constantly comes up for speculation about national office.
That's right. That's a good point there, Tom Garrity. I mean, she's not just another governor. No one's just another governor. But you know what I mean. There's things about the governor now that make her a national story for anything. Would you agree to that? Is that a difficulty?
Difficulty is really, it's a difficulty only if it interferes with her leadership.
There you go.
New Mexico, has had, a pretty good run of its last three governors, have been very comfortable in the national spotlight. But for residents here, what it really comes down to is what is the trust of government? And, allegations like this, whispers of investigations, the Secretary of State, it damages trust in government at the state and the local level. And so, how do you rebuild that trust is the big issue. And I think a lot of it is just through transparency. And this investigation, I think, if it ever results in any type of grand jury investigation, because this has been a steady drumbeat over the last, 6 years maybe?
It seems like it, yeah.
It's really, it's going to come down to transparency. Right. And, who's going to be the most transparent? Right now, everybody's holding on to their cards, or at least it seems, to protect a legal case.
That's right. Antoinette, I mentioned Jay McCluskey. He goes by a lot of different reputations, around, depending on where you are politically. Some see him as a savior, some he's the devil. It really depends, but the New Mexico In Depth reported that he's raked in about $7 million through various routes of donations that he then disperses to candidates and does all kinds of different things. Does that is the sheer amount of money that this man is making part of the problem here? Does that cloud the issue for some people?
Well, it really points up the problems, the whole campaign reform issues and Citizen United. I mean, it brings all of that in, and it just illustrates what goes wrong when you don't have good campaign reform. But I'm kind of troubled. I mean, this whole thing is interesting, and but what worries me is there is a lot of smoke. I want to see the fire, and I just, when you have stories leaked about it and you have Republicans leaking it, it affects the investigation. People who know information are reading about it and getting scared and getting concerned. And so I actually think there was a lot of criticism about the Journal not publishing, after the Santa Fe, New Mexican came out. And I think it's not ready.
Yeah.
I think there's more.
Sure, Rob, we have about 30 seconds here. Part of the allegations include audits of enemies through the Tax and Rev Department, which actually expands the whole ickiness of this a little bit more. Do you know what I mean? It's sort of a drumbeat thing that people have to get their arms
Again,
around.
as Antoinette said, and also as Rachel said, we don't know what's there, but that the fact that specter of auditing people. Now, the Martinez administration says we've, as a state, have expanded audits all over the place. Chris Sanchez, who's the spokesman for the governor's office, says that even he has gotten audited as well. So we'll see what happens.
Interesting. Up next, the monitor for the agreement between the Albuquerque Police Department and the Department of Justice joins us to talk about how he will track reform efforts and what he sees being done in other cities.